Every year, in January, hundreds of thousands of people gather in Washington, D.C. for the annual March for Life to witness to the right to life of unborn babies. The Archdiocese of Washington annually hosts, in our nation's capital, the Mass and Rally for Life, where thousands of Catholics, especially young people, gather together to celebrate and pray for the respect of human life. Since 1973, when abortion was legalized throughout the United States, over 60 million unborn babies have been surgically aborted. This tragic reality brings together people from various backgrounds who want to defend the most vulnerable, defenseless, and innocent human beings in our country. It is a horror and grave sin that needs to be brought to an end as soon as possible. Such a change, however, is not solely dependent upon a mere political or legal change. In order for abortion to come to an end, we need to learn what it means to be truly pro-life. Being pro-life in the most authentic sense is about more than outlawing the termination of innocent, unborn human life. To be genuinely pro-life, we need to cherish, protect, and promote human life from the very beginning to its natural end, or as is often stated, from the womb to the tomb. In 1995, St. John Paul II published the papal encyclical Evangelium Vitae, or the Gospel of Life. In this document, he speaks of how the Gospel of Life is at the heart of Jesus' message. He notes the emergence of a veritable culture of death in our world, and he discusses how we must move toward a genuine culture of life by proclaiming the gospel of life. This means that while the protection of the unborn should always be our first concern, it cannot be our only concern. Because I could be anti-abortion, but not really pro-life, especially if I fail to consistently proclaim the gospel of life. If I fail to recognize the dignity of each and every human being, then I am not truly pro-life, even if I am a great champion of the unborn. The dignity that is present in the unborn from the moment of conception is also present in a person throughout his or her life. The reason for this, as noted in the Catholic Catechism, number 1700, is because the dignity of each and every human person is given to us by God, who made us in his image and likeness. We read in the creation stories, "Then God said, 'Let us make human beings in our image, after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the tame animals, all the wild animals, and all the creatures that crawl on the earth.' God created mankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them." Consequently, since our human dignity and our very lives come from God, it is only God who has the right to take life. Returning to Evangelium Vitae, St. John Paul II states, "Man's life comes from God. It is his gift, his image and imprint, a sharing in his breath of life. God, therefore, is the sole Lord of this life. Man cannot do with it as he wills. Human life and death are thus in the hands of God, in his power." The sacredness of human life gives rise to a principle called inviolability, which means that it cannot be violated. Human life is inviolable, regardless of a person's age, background, or even their degree of sin. Therefore, no human being should ever take the life of another, as is clearly stated in the fifth commandment, "You shall not kill." So being pro-life means promoting and protecting human life whenever it is threatened. Euthanasia, suicide, capital punishment, and war, as well as abortion. Now, someone might ask about self-defense when my own life or the life of another person is endangered. What am I to do under those circumstances? The Church acknowledges that sometimes the very protection of human life might mean the life or well-being of an aggressor is injured or endangered. In Catechism number 2265, the Church teaches legitimate defense can be not only a right, but a grave duty for one who is responsible for the lives of others. The defense of the common good requires that an unjust aggressor be rendered unable to cause harm. For this reason, those who legitimately hold authority also have the right to use arms to repel aggressors against the civil community entrusted to their responsibility. Such measures are always a last resort and can be used only when no other options are available. And the purpose is to protect life, not to kill it. Consequently, self-defense should never be an excuse to justify unnecessary violence or revenge. This is also part of the reason why capital punishment or the death penalty is morally unacceptable. In the past, the Church was tolerant of capital punishment as a means of societal self-defense. But St. John Paul II and more recently Pope Francis have helped us to see more clearly that the gospel of life does not allow for capital punishment. In October of 2017, Pope Francis gave an address which has led to the revising of the Catholic Catechism, affirming ever more strongly the gospel of life. He said, "It must be clearly stated that the death penalty is an inhumane measure that, regardless of how it is carried out, abases human dignity. It is per se contrary to the gospel, because it entails the willful suppression of a human life that never ceases to be sacred in the eyes of its Creator, and of which, ultimately, only God is the true judge and guarantor. No man, not even a murderer, loses his personal dignity, because God is a Father who always awaits the return of his children who, knowing that they have made mistakes, ask for forgiveness and begin a new life. No one ought to be deprived not only of life, but also of the chance for a moral and existential redemption that in turn can benefit the community. It is necessary, therefore, to reaffirm that no matter how serious the crime that has been committed, the death penalty is inadmissible because it is an attack on the inviolability and the dignity of the person." Being pro-life means promoting and protecting the dignity of every human person in every circumstance. That means that being pro-life also includes other issues related to all forms of violence, such as physical or sexual abuse or rape, all forms of discrimination, such as racism, sexism, homophobia, and even immigration and how immigrants are treated, who is allowed in and who is not, and why. And there are more. Once again, St. John Paul II reminds us that Jesus wants us to promote life by living out the Lord's commandment to love, and not just avoiding doing physical harm to others. So how can I be an authentically pro-life person? Here are 3 suggestions. First, respect. Do I look upon each and every person with the respect that their human dignity deserves? Whether I am looking at a newborn baby, a child with Down syndrome, a homeless person, a cranky, sick, elderly person, or a convicted felon. I need to recognize that they are made in God's image and likeness and treat them with the respect that God Himself gives them. Second, redemption. Do I believe that each and every person is redeemable, starting first and foremost with myself? I need to truly believe that I am redeemed by Jesus despite my sinfulness and weakness. Not because I have earned it or deserve it somehow, because I don't deserve it, and I can never earn it. Everyone, from the holiest saint to the worst sinner, is in need of redemption. It is God's free and generous gift, just like the gift of life itself. So I am also called to believe and accept that no one, just like me, is beyond redemption. And finally, reconciliation. Sin wounds me in so many ways, both my own sins as well as the sins of others. Reconciliation is essentially about healing and peace. So many life issues at their core are about a need for deeper healing. A woman who believes that abortion is her only option is a wounded soul who needs to be reconciled to God, to herself, and to her child. The tortured soul of a person who is suffering greatly, either from depression or from a severe, maybe incurable illness, and is contemplating ending his or her own life, needs to be reconciled to Jesus on the cross and realize that they are not suffering alone and that their life is not without purpose. The drug addict who keeps committing crimes to supply his addiction needs to be reconciled to God and to who God made him to be. Am I willing to be God's instrument of reconciliation, his instrument of healing, so that others might know the immeasurable value of their lives? Let us work toward a culture of life, not only by marching and rallying, but by respecting the dignity of each and every person, by believing in God's plan for the redemption of each and every one of us, and by being instruments of reconciliation to God, to each other, and to ourselves. God bless, protect, and keep you always.